everybody, a warm welcome to another interview on Wisdom from North. I'm Janneke, and today I'm just thrilled to be here with Dr. Andrea Pennington. Andrea is a globally recognized branding expert and a media producer and a publisher. She is an internationally TEDx speaker and has been on Oprah several times. She has also 18 years of experience as an integrative medicine physician, acupuncturist, she's a meditation teacher, and actually a sex educator. And I'm also very excited to announce that Andrea will be one of our upcoming masterclass teachers on the Wisdom from North membership. And that membership is for those of you who want to go deeper into the journey and really step into your authentic soul power and your soul's calling. So you can read more about that below in the video description and get on the VIP waitlist. Hello, Andrea. How are you doing today? Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Janneke. I'm doing well. It's great to connect with you.
Yes, it's just been summer and you're in France and I'm in Norway, and I'm so excited to be connecting because I know you have a lot of interesting and very great, powerful things going on this fall, an event that's coming up, and you're doing so many things, and that is part of you because you're like multi-passionate, which is part of what I want to speak about today. We're going to speak about how to become the hero in our lives using LifeWriting, which is new to me. And we're also going to speak about liberating the authentic self and also your journey and your spiritual experience that changed a lot for you. Mm. Very powerful stuff. So I'd love to begin a bit with your journey because you were kind of an overachiever. You did everything. You became a doctor and this and that, and in many ways to fill this emptiness you felt inside. And I really identified with that, and I think a lot of us can. So can you tell us a bit about your story?
Yes. I am American, and as you mentioned, I'm here in the sunny south of France. But I grew up in the United States. And it's true, when I was a little girl, I felt this sense of, we might call it loneliness. I don't know if I would have used that word then, but as a little girl, I felt like there was more to life than what I was seeing. I would describe it as this kind of spiritual connection. I just felt like there was a part of me somewhere else. Now, I don't mean I was absent totally from my body or my life, but I just felt a sense of longing, not because there was anything really terrible going on in my life, but I just felt like there was more. And I think part of it may have come because my parents got divorced when I was 3 years old. And like so many children, we ended up in different households. And because America is a huge country, we were several states apart. So I only saw my father a couple of times a year. Of course, this was before Skype and FaceTime. So it was really just the phone. And I think that was probably part of this longing that I felt. But what did happen for me, which is different from my brother and sister, which I'm fascinated by how divorce or other life events affect our siblings differently, right? So for me, I definitely wanted to always do what my father said so that I could have his approval and have his affection continued. And so because he grew up in a pretty low-income family, he was driven to help his children have a good education. And so it was instilled in me, programmed into me from the very beginning that I should focus on schoolwork, I should get good grades. And so the trouble for me came when I started wanting to do other things, like acting and singing and performing and then being in the band or running track and field or being a cheerleader. Anytime I had something outside of school going on, there was this pressure. Like, okay, you can do that, but only if you have good grades. And so that was fine for me. I just studied hard. I worked hard to make sure my grades were high so I could keep doing those things. But what I didn't know was happening, nobody knows, even my parents didn't know they were programming me, but it created this internal drive to constantly seek for approval, validation, acceptance, through achievement. So it's interesting because when I was like probably in my teenage years, I started to realize that even if I wasn't, telling my dad, oh, look, I got all A's on my report card, even if I was just having a regular conversation, I could still feel his love. Intellectually now I can look back and say, of course I was loved, even if it wasn't about a report card or whatever. But that drive had started so early that when I got to university, I was pursuing 2 degrees at the same time. I was doing all of this art stuff, pursuing theater. I ended up managing our campus television station, teaching classes in video production, doing all of that stuff. And at the same time, I was getting a biology major, chemistry minor, so that I could go off to medical school. So I was always driven by doing these 2 things simultaneously, and always with kind of this high level of excellence that was expected of me. And it drove me. It was totally fine through college. I had a lot of energy for it. But when I got to medical school, that's when things started to kind of shift. Because as you can imagine, the medical school demands were much higher. And for the first time, I was really surrounded by people who did nothing else but study. Like for me, I was always balanced. I had fun. I did creative things. I was around smart people in our biology program, but it wasn't like it was so concentrated. And that really affected me because, I was in my early 20s, and it was just kind of like, oh, wow, these people are so different. And I felt this need to kind of focus just to keep up. And I realize now that that was part of the problem, because I was only expressing or concentrating my energy on one part of me. It's just like all brains and, academics. And I started to experience feelings of depression. I felt sad. I felt kind of like, is this all there is to life? But again, with everyone else doing the same thing, it's just like, you got to keep going. What else are you going to do? This is what people do. This is what adults do. You go, you get a degree, you become something. But it affected me to a great degree, and I went to one of our doctors at Student Health to get some help. And it was funny because she remembered interviewing me when I applied for medical school. And she remembered all of the creative stuff that I did. And she asked me, how often are you playing the piano now? And it was like one of those questions that I was like, where's this coming from? Like, what? I don't play the piano. I study. Like, what are you thinking? And it was the first time that a doctor told me, okay, you need to go play the piano more. Like, and right now it sounds so dumb, right? It sounds so obvious. Of course you need to do things that feed your soul, that are fun, that are creative, that you can give your brain a break. But at the time, it was very hard. She told me I should be playing the piano like 30 minutes a day, and I freaked out. And so she was like, okay, maybe just 30 minutes a week. And you'd think that that would have been, my salvation. But it wasn't until I got into my medical career where, again, I was working in a hospital 100 hours a week. It was really intense, and I wasn't doing anything creative. And once again, the depression came back. And of course, you could say it was because it was very sad working in a hospital over the hours. But now I know it was because there was part of me that wasn't active, that wasn't being nourished. And eventually, I got out of my medical training. I opened up a big wellness center, started doing TV. So for a while, I was balanced. But then as the demands of just being a professional started to increase even more, where I had employees who were depending on me, once again, I was starting to feel like I didn't have that outlet for creativity. And because in my medical practice, I was now being sent multiple cases. So we would get medical cases from all across North America of people who were really struggling. Because my wellness center was very different. We had acupuncture, like you mentioned in the intro. We had psychology, psychotherapy, massage. We had a spa. And I did all of the behavioral counseling and therapy in addition to regular medicine. So we were starting to get people who had kind of problems in their body, or their illnesses weren't responding to normal treatment. And people would just be like, okay, well, go to that weird holistic doctor over there. And I was starting to realize, like, there's so much that we carry in our bodies and in our minds that weigh us down, that impact our healing from the inside, that while it was fulfilling on one level, it was very heavy for someone, who had just turned 30. It was very heavy for me to see so much suffering and to realize that the normal treatments that most people were getting were not going to help them. And it was during that process that I myself was also realizing that unless I went deep within myself to really know, like, why am I doing all of this? What's the point? Because after a while I realized, like, why are you always going for another certification and another this and another that? After doing the book and being on Oprah, it's like, I could feel it. I was really starting to feel that drive. And it's like, where's this coming from? Like, you've already achieved so much. And when I had this kind of breakthrough moment where it was like, I am not happy, this is not fulfilling, and it's not sustainable. That's when I had this moment of clarity where it was like, I've got to do something different.
Just want to comment. It's really powerful because it maps out so many other people's stories as well. And I loved how you really went into this and elaborated on it, because I can recognize myself on how we don't know that it's the ego's drive for that accomplishment, that acknowledgement, and especially often from our parents. I had the same thing, even though my father was always supporting me. I felt that I was making him happy when I achieved something, that was what made him happy. And the day when I realized that he was like, oh great, he wasn't that like excited that I achieved something, I was like, but why are you not happy? Well, so I felt that my responsibility was to make him happy through my achievements, and that's a big misunderstanding from a child. And it's also interesting to see how our soul is like calling and like shouting to us, like, you are so much, like our soul wants us to express so many parts of us, and if we don't, we crash. I think I'm not sure if everybody has a specific soul's calling, but I think if we do, that this is my theory, if we're looking for it, it's because there is one to find. And if we are suppressing it, that's when like our soul is like knocking really, really hard on the door, because it wants us to express that parts of us. And I'm curious to hear more about that turning point where you actually, in many ways, came in contact with your soul and your spirit. And from me, it seems like it was a moment of surrender. And that is very magical. When we surrender, often something profound happens. So I would love to hear about that.
Yes, surrender is such a big word and a big concept, especially for people who are used to being on that achievement track. But for me, I was so miserable. I had gotten to the point where I was working for Discovery Channel at the time, and I was on air, on TV, every single day, hosting the news. I was hosting my own show, starting to appearing on other networks. And the weight of it was starting to create this sense of anxiety. For me, I would wake up kind of like, oh God, I have to do this again. And the thing about it is, it was so repetitive that it almost started to lose some of its meaning. And this happens to people in TV, especially if you're doing kind of the same thing every day. I mean, the scripts were different. Every documentary film I did was slightly different, but it lacked kind of the soul, and the stuff that I really, really was interested in. Like, I'm really interested in the stuff that you and I have talked about, like the soul's journey and all of that. And especially as I was looking at my patients, they were doing the same things. Now, maybe some people had chosen addiction or eating disorders. They found some way to kind of take care of their pain. But they were in the same situation where maybe they were in a bad relationship, or the wrong field of study at university, or they went down the wrong career path because they were pushed by their parents or society. And it was kind of like this mirror effect where I recognized, oh wow, this person is not following their true path. And they're upset, they're feeling that anxiety, that irritability, that sense of depression. And I was starting to recognize that as the soul. It's not the ego, because the ego would be happy. You're getting all this money and you're famous and everyone's happy and proud of you. But why would you not feel satisfied? It's because there's this deeper part of you that knows there's more to life and that maybe you're supposed to be doing something else. And so I got to this moment in 2005. I had the opportunity to go on a vacation, and I was leaving America, coming to Europe. And at that time, our TV network wasn't everywhere. Like now you can see our shows everywhere. But at that time, people in Europe wouldn't know who I was. So I decided that I was going to come here and just be anonymous. I was going to be Drea, the artist. And I was just going to have a normal vacation where people didn't know my name and they didn't know that I was a doctor. And the funniest thing happened. It was basically the law of attraction. Because I said I was going out as this artist, suddenly people were acting like I was an artist. I was some famous superstar. And at first I was like, now they can't know who I am. They've never seen my show. How are they acting like they know me or like I'm a star? But I ended up meeting someone in Saint-Tropez, and I told him that I sing. At that time, I really wanted to pursue my singing career on the side. And he said, oh, that's great. I know the DJ at the hottest club. You should come and we'll get you in there. You can sing. And so I was like, yes, I'll do that. And so that night, there I am, like up in this club, just hundreds of people like moving and swaying, and I'm like singing on the mic. And it was like the most blissful experience. I literally felt like they were receiving the real me and all of me. And then when I got back to my hotel room, the next day I kind of woke up like, okay, what just happened? Like that was truly an experience of bliss. And then it hit me that in 2 days I would have to go back home, back to America, back to living in that box. And that's when I could feel this like darkness overtake me. And it was like that depression and the anxiety was so thick and heavy that I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And so that's when surrender came in. I literally cried out to God. And I said, I can't live this life anymore. I don't want it. And I wasn't going to commit suicide. I wasn't suicidal. But I knew that I had something had to change. And it was in that moment of like shaking and crying and truly surrendering that I had an out-of-body experience. And that's when things were a little bit weird, because as I was shaking on the bed, I was crying, suddenly I felt like my body melted into the bed. And I saw this bright, bright light, and I could feel myself leaving my body, being drawn into this light. And that's when I thought God was answering my prayer. I thought God was taking me. And I felt complete peace. There was no struggle. It felt like, oh, finally, I could like just be. And it was in that surrender that I got to this other side, as I call it. I saw a complete life review.
Wow.
I saw every, but like that. It was like instant. I could see everything from my childhood up until that moment. And every decision logically led to depression. And it was this kind of understanding that I'm like, oh, you mean I could have chosen differently? And it was then that I was shown this kind of image of like almost like the sun, this big light source, and that we are like little droplets of light, of consciousness. And as we come to Earth and we inherit this Earth suit, that light that's within us, that's the real you, that's your soul. And you have this destiny, and it's up to you to find it. It's up to you to define who you're going to be on this earth. It's not up to our parents or society or religion or anybody else. And all of this just came like in a vision and as a knowing. It was just like a known thing. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, if I get to choose, I would say yes to life. I could do things differently. And that's when I saw a vision. Another vision unfolded. I saw myself living in the south of France. I saw myself walking hand in hand with a child, which was a little crazy because I was 35 and single. I saw that I would be singing professionally, and I was healing with my hands, which again was another weird thing because I was like, really, God, you're making me into a woo-woo doctor? But at the time, I felt so much peace. I felt so much hope and love. That's when I said yes to life. And so I know now that it was that breakdown of my ego. It was that surrendering that allowed my soul to leave and have this experience. You know, for me, it was weird because I'd never read anything about near-death experiences. I'd never heard of anyone having a near-death experience who didn't actually die, you know, or be in surgery or, you know, an accident. So it really fascinated me. It made me do a lot of research and study about consciousness and the brain and, you know, what happened. But it was this understanding that really put me on the path to where I am today, and that is helping other people uncover the mysteries of your soul's journey. Because I believe we're really all on this journey of awakening. We're all waking up to the fact that we each have that power to decide who we will be. We have this infinite potential to create or co-create a life of love and joy and fulfillment and vitality. And if we choose to be the hero instead of the victim, everything can change. Everything can change.
Very fascinating. I have a lot of questions popping up in my mind. I'm like, where to go with this? Because there's so many paths to go in this interview. I still want to mention that to me it sounds like a near-death experience, because most near-death experiences have that component of the life review. So I find that interesting, actually, because it was more of an out-of-body experience. Like, you didn't die, but still you had that experience. So that's really profound. And I thought it was very interesting that you said what led to that depression, because that makes me think, well, how much do we choose it, or how much is it just happening because of our social conditioning? So in a way, yes, we are choosing it, but kind of, I would say, unconsciously, because those programmings are driving us so much. I think it would be difficult for you to not become a doctor from that conditioning, in a sense. And I think that's part of the journey that we're learning from. However, what I find also fascinating is that some people like you are getting that experience and that grace, and some are not. Some are not having that verification that, oh, you know, I can choose my life. And I find that interesting why that is. And when I was in India, on this ashram, they taught me that we can have mystical and spiritual experiences either through really hard work, like practice, or through grace. It just happens. And there's a mystery here. And I've had a few experiences myself, not like yours, not as that profound, I feel like, but I've had some experiences through hard work, like through meditating, being out of my body. And what I experienced was that I was loved. Like, I really had the experience that I'm just loved, and that the universe loves me. I am loved and I am loved. And so that never left me, although it kind of dissipates in a way, but it's still a remembrance. So I'm very grateful for having experienced that. And then makes it easier for me, and I think teachers like you, to actually talk about this, because we have an experience that is true for us. It's not just a concept.
And that's exactly what has directed my work. Because what you've described, these spontaneous feelings of grace, of oneness, of pure love, When I started to research like what happened to me, I found people all over the world who were having experiences like that. That yes, sometimes it is through deep contemplation or meditation or witnessing a miracle in the world, and we have these experiences. And so what's interesting is that I got to connect some of these neuroscientists who've been studying near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, what psychics and healers are doing and what's happening in their brains. And what's cool is our brains are wired for mystical experiences, meaning this is the cool stuff. Like there was a Time magazine front page article that said, we are wired to know God. And it's because these researchers have discovered that when people, they could be doing prayer, they could be chanting, they could be doing kundalini work, and they can document that certain parts of your brain will have different electrical activity. And what they found is that as long as you haven't had a major brain injury, and sometimes actually the brain injury helps you to have certain mystical experiences, many people can recreate states that will put them into that feeling of oneness or love. So just like falling in love can make us feel all, like everything's rosy. And so that's what has led me over the last several years now to try to create different pathways for people to have those experiences that you had. So you don't have to travel to a foreign country or sing on stage or totally, want to end your life. You can start to do things like meditation, getting involved in music. We do a lot of different guided meditations with music therapy or writing therapy that can help you have these moments where you're like, you get out of the ego and into an expanded state of consciousness. So that like you have an experience for yourself that shows you, okay, I'm more than just my body. I'm more than my past. I'm more than all those mistakes. There's something else about me that's lovable, that is love, and that deserves happiness and success and vitality. And so that's what I'm dedicated to doing now for people, is giving them different pathways to achieve that state of bliss.
Amazing. So important. And could you tell us a bit about life writing and becoming the hero in our lives through life writing, what that is?
Yes, life writing is the term that I use for narrative therapy. So in the psychology world, it's officially called personal narrative therapy. And so essentially what you're doing is just writing about your life, hopefully writing it with as much feeling and emotion as you can. And what you tend to find out is that when you can look back on a story in black and white, you gain new insights. You gain insights about the characters that have been involved, maybe externally or internally. You start to gain insights about the parts of yourself that may have been active or inactivated, kind of pushed aside. Maybe the artist in you was told that the arts are not good, they're not a safe way for you to make a living, so your artist got suppressed. So I've been working with this Jungian psychotherapist in Holland, Ofkia Tekens, and together we've combined life writing as a way for people to really get in touch with their own talents, their archetypes, and to gain this insight about how your soul is here on a journey. And it's very easy, especially for the patients that I work with. I work with people who've experienced severe trauma, like the worst experiences that you can imagine a human would go through. And some people experience trauma and they completely break down and they never get back up. They become victims. While another group of people can experience really traumatic things, but for some reason they bounce back and they start to thrive and grow. And so for me, for the last 10 years, I've been looking at the difference between post-traumatic growth and post-traumatic stress disorder and withering away. And what's been interesting is that when you get engaged in life writing, when you write about aspects of your life, it could be a high point, a low point, a turning point, you're able to gain insights that help you heal that part of yourself that may not have ever gotten the therapy it needed.
Are you then re-experiencing the traumas or the difficult parts? Is that part of the point to experience it or own the emotions that perhaps were suppressed?
it can happen both ways. When I work with someone one-on-one in a very safe space, sometimes as someone is writing or reading their story back, they will experience that. But we generally go through procedures to create a safe container first, whether that's with EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and repatterning. We create a physiologic state for a person to feel safe, so that when you go back and you're reviewing a trauma, if you start to feel overwhelmed, you can return. But in general, with LifeWriting, you don't have to re-experience your trauma, which I think is the most important thing for people to know, because many times if people have experienced abuse, neglect, sexual assault, they bury it so much because it's been so painful. Unfortunately, it gets locked in their body, it's locked in their cells, but they don't want to revisit it because it's too painful. But with writing therapy, it's like you're having a little bit of distance. You're just getting out the emotions into the writing. And then when you have someone like a coach or a therapist with you, then you can interpret it, but you can start to put it into new light. Because sometimes if, for example, if a child has been abused and maybe the person abusing them told them, you can't tell anyone or it's going to be worse for you, they start to create beliefs about themselves, about maybe they think they deserved it or they just weren't good enough. Or no, now the world is not safe, I can't trust anyone. And those beliefs stick with them, even to the point that they are adults, they may have advanced degrees and be really competent in some areas of their lives, but there's still this aspect of themselves that is trapped. And so what we find with doing this narrative therapy is you can start as an adult to return and give counsel or advice to that younger part of you, so that you can transform those beliefs. Because if you keep holding the belief that the world isn't safe, or all men are bad, or all women are bad, then it's going to make it very hard for you as an adult to have a healthy relationship, for example, or to run a company, for example. So you don't always have to re-experience the trauma, but you can experience the healing benefits and the transformational benefits. And so this idea of becoming a hero is really what the resilience research shows us, that if we want to grow from our traumatic experiences, then it means we have to take ownership of our lives. Doesn't mean we excuse whatever evil things may have happened, but it's that we recognize that in this moment and every moment forward, I'm in control of my life, I'm in control of my choices, and we can start to reinterpret those past experiences. And maybe you'll find that your soul has been on this journey and there's meaning. And that's the biggest thing. When you can start to recognize that there's meaning for your suffering and that you can take that meaning and now help other people, help the people closest to you, your family members, to heal and to grow, it changes everything. And I've seen my patients overcome health challenges. We know that stress affects the body. We know that stress can produce headaches and migraines and fibromyalgia and all of that. But what's interesting is that when you deal with these traumas, we clean up sort of the bioenergetic system of the body. And that stress-induced illness, whether it's asthma or skin conditions or irritable bowel or any of the autoimmune conditions, we've seen those clear up as people heal their trauma. So it's a profound way to give us this access to our own healing capabilities and to move forward as the hero of your epic life journey.
Fascinating. I have a theory that when talking about stress and how it shows up in our bodies, we have different vulnerable places in our bodies. And that's from my experience that, for instance, my father always get a headache. I always lose my voice. My friend always gets stomach issues or skin issues. I don't get that. And it seems like that we have spots that are a bit more vulnerable, and that's where it hits us.
Yes.
And often it is that thing that we need the most. For me, it is the voice, and that's where now.
And isn't that a great way to get your attention? The body is this messenger. And so if we haven't been taking care of ourselves, or we've, relaxed our boundaries, we haven't said no enough. Sometimes, the body will be the one that takes the hit to get your attention. But what you've described is exactly what I learned when I started studying acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So when you learn about the 5 elements in Chinese medicine, and what we do, we actually look at a biopsychosocial type. And each of us carries a different energy influence. So like what you were describing, for me, if I'm going to get sick, and I'm very rarely sick, sometimes it'll be a respiratory thing or asthma. If someone has more of an earth element, where that's their dominant influence, and they get stressed or they've worked themselves too hard, the earth element governs our digestive area and our reproductive area. So we'll see that people who are out of balance in that area will have things like irritable bowel or constipation, or for women, they'll have fertility problems or fibroids. But exactly what you've found intuitively is what I learned with Chinese medicine, that we each have an area of our body or mind that can become a little bit sensitive if we're not tuned into our energy.
It's very interesting. And I think also the syndrome of fatigue that, has been really coming up. I think that it has to do with the deeper issues, that it is tied to not listening to yourself, not listening to your calling. At least that's my impression on it. However, I wanted to speak a little bit about your event that is coming up and your work. Can you tell us a bit about, if people, want to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
Yes, well, you can find me at makeyourmarkglobal.com. So what I do for coaches and healers and light workers, I help them get their message out to a global audience. And we do that through publishing, through personal branding, and through public speaking. So I'm helping people tune into your own authentic voice, no copycats, you have to be your authentic voice, and then sharing that with the world through the media. And so, this fall we have programs that help healers and coaches who want to increase their visibility through online. We also have programs for speakers and for people who want to become an author. So that people can finally find you and find out about you and what makes you unique. So those are the kinds of things that we're up to at Make Your Mark Global. It's fun for me because where I am today is only focused on the soul-inspired entrepreneur or a healer. So I've taken my background from television and media, taken my background as a doctor and a therapist, and now bringing it together to help other people so that we can start spreading messages like this so other people realize there are other ways to heal than just taking a prescription or going to talk therapy or even surgery. There are a number of ways for us to heal. And I find that doing this is really the perfect balance for me personally.
I think it's so important what you're saying, that there are several ways of healing. And one of my biggest is that there's not one path. There's not one way and one solution. There are many. And sometimes we have to dig a bit deeper, but there's always a solution, I believe, but there are many, or there's always a solution for you, but there are many paths. So, and I think that's important because there's so many resources available for us, and it's unnatural that it would be only one solution. Because life is so vast. I mean, there's so, the universe is totally or continuously expanding.
Yes.
And I think we are expanding all the time. I think new things are created all the time. And another thing I wanted to mention is that it's so interesting to look at your journey, because I'm thinking, would it be possible for you to do what you do today if it wasn't for your background in music and being an artist, being on television, being a doctor? You have exactly what you need to do what you're doing today.
Exactly.
And that is how the intelligence, wherever it is, God or whatever we want to call it, is just so intelligent. Like there is a reason for things happening. So it's kind of that trusting that everything that happens for a reason, but not being stuck there, feeling like, I have to be in this wrong place.
Right.
Waking up from it, but also appreciating what happened. So a lot of the times it's like this paradox in a sense.
Yeah.
That it's not like we want struggles to happen, but in a way they need to happen in order to learn something.
For some of us, unfortunately, I'm one of those people that, had to hit my head a few times, but like you said a few minutes ago, sometimes there is a soul calling. So in our LifeWriting course, for example, we teach people how to look at the hero's journey, which we use in film and books. And the hero's journey starts off with a call. And they're often, I can look back now and I can see the number of times where my soul was saying, you need to sing, you need to create. Other people were inviting me to sing. I got invited to sing at a wedding and I was like, no, I'm not a singer. And it was like a friend of mine just went and told them yes. So I find myself at this event and they're like, oh, great. Here the bride and groom that you're singing for. And I'm like, yeah. So like, there are these number of times when we look back that we realize this is a soul calling. And that can be scary, I admit, like especially for me. I've liked being a doctor and being a TV person because then you can make sure everything is right. You check your facts and the lighting and the camera. But when it comes to singing, like about your voice, it's like I might hit a wrong note, and it requires that surrender. But when we are able to like look at our life and see that it really is a hero's journey, it's a journey of awakening, it's a journey of discovery, it's a journey of becoming. And once we say yes to the call, when we accept that calling and we step out onto this journey of adventure, that's when you start to meet new allies and new mentors. You're going to be tested, of course. Because that's what life is. Life is a series of, lessons and tests. It's just the nature of life. But it doesn't have to be so scary when you can sort of take a different perspective and say, okay, well, this is about me growing, about bringing up all of the resources within me, all of my talents and abilities, and really owning them, and then putting them into service for myself and my well-being, for my family, for society, maybe even for the whole world. And then you can start to look at, wow, life is really giving me everything I need to succeed. It's giving me the challenges and the opportunities. It's giving me the mentors and the supporters. And as you do that, you gain more confidence. And one of the other things that we've done is we've assembled an online community as part of the Real Self-Love movement. Because I feel like when you decide that you're going to say yes to that calling, maybe it means you're taking on a new career, or you're leaving a bad marriage, or maybe even leaving your country, like I did. 9 years ago, I left America and followed that vision that was given to me. And it can be very scary because all of a sudden you're alone, or maybe you've left your family of origin because they didn't accept you. But now, thanks to internet and technology and having people in multiple countries, we can connect to a whole new family, a whole new tribe. And so we started the Real Self-Love movement to allow people to go through these processes that I learned the hard way. I've now put them into books. I have training programs, and most of it is free. I mean, we give this stuff away free so that you can try to follow these same steps to arrive at your own place of self-love. And so if you visit realself.love, you can join the Real Self-Love movement, download the Real Self-Love Manifesto, all of the meditations, and you'll learn the same 5-step process that I'm going to be teaching in your masterclass of how to build real self-love and do this life-writing journey so that you become the hero of your own life.
So powerful. Wow. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for shining your light. You're such a lighthouse for others, and it's so important because we need to wake up. And for me, I feel like I have this metaphor that we have this star inside of us, and then we accumulate a lot of dirt and belief systems and mud, and it gets like all muddy. And then it's about, letting go layer after layer to let that shine, because that's the truth of who we are. And that is the journey, and the journey is the purpose in many ways.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well,
I love that.
thank you so much, Andrea, and all the best with your event in the fall and all your different things that you're doing. And your work is really, really profound, helping so many people and also helping light workers come out with their message, which is so important as well. So thank you so much, and all the best with your work.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching, guys, and remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from France and Norway. Bye bye!